All right, so this is tape loops. This is a patch that consists of 4 looper modules that each have a set of parameters you can change. So just kind of the quick rundown of the front page here. So this is kind of the performance page. You have 4 loopers. You can see they're color-coded, orange, green. And down here you have pink and blue buttons for each one. So the pink is record, the blue is stop, the middle one here is reverse, and then the top 2 you have octave down, octave up. And so each set has its own independent controls. And then down here at the bottom you have these 4 buttons which automate these kind of by probability random, having these shutting on and off. So these are all essentially latching push buttons. You know, you can sit here and manually mess with it to create whatever loops you want, or you can click these buttons. Like for instance, the pink one here will automate recording. This one is reverse. This one is octave down. This one is octave up. I'm not automating recording right now because as soon as it records, it's going to start playing audio. But you can see how they're all kind of changing on their own there. So in the background, I just have this really sparse kind of guitar loop that's, I don't know, a minute long or something, just has some random notes happening. So I'm going to leave that. We're going to go full wet just because it's fun to hear what it captures without knowing what it's capturing. But obviously you can monitor what you're capturing by having it not full wet. So let's just grab a snippet of audio. Right now it's recording. We're not hearing it record. But as soon as you stop the recording, you got your playback. And so each one of these has a little pixel here that is responding to the audio. And that's just there to kind of tell you which loop is playing what if you want to go through and modify things. So right off the bat, you can hear this one. You can hear the tape effect happening there. So you hear dropouts, you hear warble, you hear noise. Actually, I'm going to add a little bit more noise to the loops here. So let's just get a couple going and play with them to show you kind of what all happens here. So right now I just have a loop playing in the background and I'm just grabbing sort of random snippets. Obviously you can, be more intentional about what you're recording into here. And you can hear too that these are all sort of spread across the stereo spectrum. So you have basically all the way left, basically all the way right, left center, right center. So that's our reverse button. We got octave down. The tape effects are basically fed into the recording of the loop. So when you're hearing the noise and the warble and the dropouts, that's baked into the loop that you've recorded, into that buffer. But when you're just playing your dry audio through, you're not getting any tape effect. So, I was going to make it all tape, but then I was like, sometimes it's just nice to have, like if you're having a full mix go through or something, just having the original audio to be able to kind of sit there doing its own thing and have these tapey bits just as an accent in the background. So with that, when you go half speed or double speed, part of the effect of that is the noise gets shifted down in frequency, so it gives it that kind of, just fun half speed. And then octave up. So let's kick on. This is automating the reverse. So all the ones in this middle line here, you can see them going on and off. Let's just have them all go. So as far as other controls here, you can see we're in this, I forget what it's called, but like maybe performance mode? I don't know. But when this is blue, it means that these are acting all as foot switches within the patch, as opposed to like this won't bypass anything right now because I'm in this mode. As for this patch, I only have these two set to anything. So this one is convenient, and that just stops all the loops. And this one here is sent to this record button. Whatever state this is in, this will reverse the state or flip-flop the state. So if we have them all off, pushing this turns them all on, which, as you can hear, gives them all the same. Which can be fun, you know, if we just leave all those like in different, these settings different, then even though it's grabbing the exact same buffer, it's going to be playing the back differently. And then the other way you can use that is, say I want to record these two, then I can hit this, and it flip-flops. And, you know, you can do any configuration of that. And that's fun, you know, because you're always going to have something playing, but you can change it. So that's your front page. That's sort of the performance controls. A bunch of triggers here. Oh, I'm sorry. This blue is, that cancels out. I call it the reset switch. So that just stops the playback and essentially resets the buffer, because once you stop it, it's a stop. It's not a pause. So there's not, I didn't design it to where you can like pause a loop and restart it or anything like that. If you hit stop, the only thing to do is re-record a new buffer. So that's front page. And then your next page here, which is controls. So in the middle here is your dry wet. And then the way I have these organized is these three parameters are what's affecting the audio before it gets recorded into the buffer. And these three parameters are affecting sort of after the recording is already made. So you have noise, warble, and dropouts. And again, because all this is baked into the loop buffer, changing these is not going to have an immediate effect on what's playing back. It's only going to have an effect on a new buffer that you're recording. And then over here we have rate of random, bandpass frequency, or bandpass filter frequency, and bandpass filter Q. So if you're not familiar with Q, what Q means, it means sort of how narrow or wide the band is. So having this be a higher number is narrowing how, you know, what the width of the frequency spectrum is being allowed to pass through. And then this rate of random, what that's doing is it's affecting how quickly these things are changing. So you can kind of get a sense of, you know, they're moving, but nothing crazy. And then turn the rate of random all the way up. You can see how much faster they're going. Rate of random down. You know, they're still moving, but it's just much slower, so it's going to be a more subtle effect. So that's basically your controls. And so for anyone who's interested in learning how this was kind of put together, this has a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, at least for me. This is by far kind of the most full and complex thing I've built. And most of that actually is just because there's so many independent controls on the front page. So each one of these has a series of modules it's going through that affects the audio in one way or another. But to me, it's super fun to be able to have all this control just right in front of you. So it's really fast to kind of come up with something that you like. So we have all of our push buttons here on the front page are actually UI buttons, which is it's the UI button module, and that's being sent to this page here, which says UI sends. Each one of these is a flip-flop module that the UI button is being sent to. And so this is actually what's creating the trigger to do what those push buttons are doing. So just going through the pages, after UI sends, we have auto gain. And this is something I've put on other patches of mine, where essentially when you go up an octave, it tends to sound louder because the frequency is higher. And when you go down, it tends to sound quieter. So what this is designed to do is essentially adjust the VCA, so adjust the output volume of the loop based on what frequency shift you're doing, to try to make everything sound kind of even. Because if you don't have this, when you jump up an octave, it tends to just be kind of harsh and abrasive and sticks out. And when it's down, it tends to just get lost in the mix. So that is there for that. This page is the thing that is, well, here, I'll show you what that does. So we have all these blue and yellow module sets here. If you look at pages 6 through 8, it's random record, random 2, random 3. So the way this is built is all of these are random LFOs being sent through a comparator. So the value of random LFO going into the comparator, and then on the comparator, the negative input is basically your threshold. So what the comparator does is every time this value that's being sent to the positive input, every time that value goes above the negative input, which is your threshold, it sends a trigger. And so all of these right now, the threshold is biased to 1, which is 100% all the way up, which means this value is never going to get above that threshold because it's 100%. So those are all running in the background all the time, but when we push one of these buttons, it's not those, it's these. We push one of these buttons, it's going to this page, which is the random on-off, and it's going through a CV flip-flop into a CV invert into a CV multiplier, and this is sending a negative signal to that threshold. That would be this one. Yep. So it's bringing down the threshold by a certain amount, and it's the same amount by all of them, or for all of them, because I just found that was like a happy place for me in terms of what the probability wanted to be. So the speed of your LFO and where your threshold is set determines how often something is going to trigger. So then these triggers are sent to the same flip-flop modules that then goes to, wherever they happen to be going. So there's a pair of those for every setting on the front page. And then we get down to our looper section, which there's a page for each looper. All the pages are identical, same settings here. You have the looper module. You have a trigger module, which is what cancels out the loop. It gets sent to this stop loop function. And then you have a multiplier here and a multiplier here, which are both doing your pitching. So this is a positive output, which pitches up 12 semitones to be an octave. And then this is identical, but it's being sent through an inverter to send a negative output. Pan section, straightforward here. This just receives the output of all the loopers and sends it to a different spot on the stereo spectrum. We have 10%, 25, 75, and 90. Filter vibrato, straightforward here. So your audio, when it comes in, it's sent first through a high-pass filter set at 140 hertz. And that's just to knock off any low-end mud, because once you start pitching things around, if you pitch it lower, an octave lower, anything below 140 hertz is going to become essentially inaudible or just super rumbly to where the machines aren't going to want to process it, and that could cause distortion, or it's just going to cause rumble, which you don't need. So that's first, and then it gets sent into our vibrato, which is the warble setting on that second page, and that's CV direct. And then these are actually the bandpass filters that are after all these. So actually, the way this is set up, it's like you have this filter, this vibrato, and then it gets set to a whole bunch of other shit before it comes back to these left and right filters here. Dropout section. This is fun. It is relatively complicated for just making it sound kind of shitty. But you have a VCA, which is processing the audio as it's going into the looper. So this is placed before the looper starts recording. So we have a VCA here. We have an LFO, random LFO, being sent to an inverter, which is being sent to a slew limiter, which is being sent to this VCA. So the VCA is at 100%, and then this is modulating it down by random amounts. And that's actually going to, the slew limiter is not going straight to the VCA, it's going through a multiplier, because this multiplier is what allows us to control how much it's affecting this VCA. So you have that, which is your sort of baseline modulation. And then this is more what would be traditionally thought of as a dropout, which is you have a comparator here. And so this same random LFO is being sent to a comparator. And then we have a threshold set, which, as we talked about before, creates a trigger every time this value goes above a certain amount. So this is already modulating this. And if it goes past modulating by 73%, it's going to send a trigger, which in this case actually sends this all the way down to negative infinity, or very close to it. But you can see when it happens, every time this lights up, you'll see that drops all the way down. But it's short, tiny little blips. And so you have two different modulations going. And again, being sent through a multiplier so that we have that adjustment, the dropouts adjustment on the second page. That's adjusting how much this is being modulated. And then we just have our noise oscillator going through a filter and a VCA, super straightforward. It's just white noise, that's what's creating the noise, but it is filtered down with a bandpass, with its own bandpass. And then your VCA is what's being controlled by your noise function here. So yeah, I don't know. I hope that's helpful to folks if they want to understand a little bit more about this. I'm happy to answer questions. You know, I'm learning as I'm going here. I've only had it a few months, I guess. But I got it specifically because I wanted to build patches. So I have played around with a number of folks' patches, but primarily my intention was to learn how to basically just make whatever I want to make. And so to me, this patch is just, it's like, I don't know, instant tape loop, right? So yeah, that's basically it. I had a lot of fun building this, and I hope you guys make some cool stuff with it. Always feel free to ask questions. Happy to hear anything you might make with it, or any thoughts you have about it for future updates or anything. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.